Good evening. I'm Janet Stover, Executive Director of the Illinois Association of Rehabilitation Facilities. And with me tonight is Governor Pat Quinn, also Democratic candidate for governor this November in the election. And thank you so much for being with me tonight. The purpose of our discussion is to hear from Governor Quinn and his goals and priorities for community services and those that provide those services and their families and the consumers who rely on them. So what we'd like to do tonight, Governor, is to hear from you, and then we've got 2 or 3 follow-up questions that we'd like to ask, and so I'll turn the floor to you.
Well, number one, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Janet, and I want to salute all of those who work in a very important area of our state, really helping citizens who need a helping hand. I know there are a lot of folks in facilities all across Illinois who depend on their caretakers, and I honor the work of our caretakers, and I honor certainly the citizens who are in our facilities. And my job as governor is to do the very best I can to get the resources necessary to do this good work. And obviously we've had a tough economy, and I got sworn in there January of last year. I don't think any governor had a tougher time, but between my predecessor being impeached and removed from office, and then I had to take over the helm of our state in a very difficult recession and hurt our state budget. But I believe in getting in the arena and rolling up your sleeves. I didn't head for the hills, and I've tried to get revenue for Illinois from the federal government. It's very important that we get as many dollars as we can from Washington. This summer we were able to get another $550 million for our services for folks across Illinois from our healthcare budget and our human service budget. And I think that's part of the job of the governor, to try and get money to help important causes wherever it might be. Now, I do favor using our system in Illinois to get revenue for human services and health. And I propose that to the General Assembly. I hope to win the election on November 2nd. I think that's the proper thing to do, to properly fund our services so that the bills are paid on time, that those who are working in the vineyard doing this good work get their wages paid, their salaries paid, and those who are served get outstanding service as well. So we got to have a governor who tells the truth before the election. Running against people, they tell a lot of fairy tales about Illinois' budget situation, but I believe we've had 2 governors before me. One's in jail, one's going to jail, and I don't want to do that. I want to do it the right way all the time and be truthful with the people of Illinois. We have to cut the costs of extraneous things in state government, but we also want to make sure we focus our revenue and our resources on the important things, and that's helping everyday people, human beings who need a human service budget that's fair and adequate.
Certainly it's important to the association that the workers who are employed by community organizations that actually do the work are considered when there are difficult decisions. And as you mentioned, and as we all know, when you came into office, clearly the hurdle and the obstacle and the large hill that you had to climb had to do with the budget deficit and the crisis that is ongoing. So one of the questions that I have for you is that after the election, in a new Quinn administration, would there be a process by which you would look at what priorities you have for human services and then allow those processes to turn into action plans?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think anytime there's an election, kind of a change where the people get an opportunity to vote their conscience, my plan is to take a look at every department of state government, its leadership, its approach, and really give it a close review. I've had to kind of land on the beach here and save the state and stabilize the state, I guess you would say. But I think if we can get a mandate from the voters on November 2nd, I think we can do great things for our state of Illinois, and I do want to have a dialogue. I want to hear from those who are on the front line, who are in facilities, working there, to make sure we are doing things the right way in Illinois. And I've always been a person who's open and accessible. I started the Citizen Utility Board, Illinois' largest consumer group, and I was told it could never happen, but we did it with good old-fashioned citizen action and being open to people. And that's how I operated. That's how we started the Illinois Military Family Relief Trust Fund to help our soldiers, our reservists, called to active duty. You have to listen to people, and I want to listen very carefully to those involved in the important work of human services. You know, there were members of the legislature last year that wanted to cut human services by 50%, which was very bad. I vetoed that bill. I thought it was a bum budget, very bad budget. And ultimately, we got a better budget, but it's not perfect. And our goal is to make it a lot better, and I look forward to talking to people about that.
You've mentioned throughout not only your tenure as governor, but going forward, that there was a need for new revenue, and you've proposed a tax increase when it was a very unpopular notion, but as you said, you felt like it was something in your heart was the right thing to do. So one of the concerns that our constituencies have is the ongoing backlog of unpaid bills. And so if new revenue would be generated, do you see that closing the gap of the time of service provided to the time of payment?
Very, very important. You know, that's one of the reasons I proposed new revenue. I don't like to see these bills mount up. I inherited this huge budget deficit, over $10 billion unpaid bills, and we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it in an honest, forthright way, with the governor telling the truth before the election. So the revenue we get, I want to use that to pay down the bills. You know, it shouldn't be the slow pay, long delays. It's important we deal with that. I also think it's important, unlike my opponent who doesn't want to go to Washington, I am friends with President Obama, and President Obama understands the need to invest in human services, education, health care, and we've been able to get federal money this summer. Matter of fact, the new federal money we're getting will help us pay and accelerate some of the bills we're owed right now. You got to have a governor who can work with Congress and the President and others to bring resources back to Illinois. You know, I pay federal income tax. Most people do. Senator Brady, who I'm running against, he didn't pay federal income tax for the last 2 years. But most people in Illinois pay federal income tax, and they should get something back for their federal taxes. I want to try and get as much money from Washington as necessary to help pay our health care and human service bills right here in Illinois, and we've gotten off to a pretty good start.
The last question that I have has to deal with going into a new administration where you have the benefit of actually having a full term.
Yeah.
We often hear in human services that things are going to change, things are going to be better, but that doesn't seem to happen. And I know that we've been in a recessionary environment during your time here, but if you're elected, what commitments would you make to persons with disabilities and their families and the providers of those services that in your administration that would be a priority with you?
Excuse me. You know, last year when we had this battle to protect our investment in human services, you know, I went to a lot of facilities all over Illinois, and I was so impressed by the people who work there and the people who live there. And I want to make sure they come first. You know, sometimes they're frail and vulnerable, and they need our help to be independent. And I think it's very important you have a governor who fights for that. A governor who has a heart. I'm losing my voice here, but I'm not losing my heart.
Yeah.
You know, I think you got to have a governor who understands that in tough budgets, you don't give up, and you don't throw folks on the side of the road, and especially people with disabilities. I want to make sure citizens with disabilities have a full opportunity to have an independent life as best they can. I understand that. I fought hard for money for that. I know we have great fiscal challenges in Illinois, but my job is to get more revenue for Illinois to invest in human beings. We have great citizens in our state. The strength of Illinois are the people of Illinois. And I never ever want to give up on making sure we invest in ordinary, everyday people, whoever they may be, and make sure they have a full life.
Well, I've touched on the three major areas that we wanted to question you. Certainly, having services being available for people who need them and their families, being paid for those services in a timely way, and making sure that the experience and the expertise that providers have as direct service providers are listened to in an administration. So I would just ask you if there's any final message that you would like to leave with our constituents as they hear your pitch about
Well, I really am grateful for the interview. I'm grateful to be governor of Illinois. It's a privilege, it's an honor to serve the people. And I think that's what I want to leave with all of your viewers, that my whole life has been public service. I don't believe in any kind of wrongdoing in any way, and I've stood against that my whole life. And we need an honest governor who runs an honest government. We have challenges, it's tough, but I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm going to tell people the truth all the time. And I think that's the only way to get Illinois back on track. I've tried to do that as governor in the 20 months or so I've been governor. And I do have a heart for hard-working people who live from paycheck to paycheck and who want a governor who fights for them, for his consumers, his taxpayers, his workers. And so I really have a great deal of respect for your organization. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody. I work every day with our soldiers. I'm the Commander-in-Chief of the Illinois National Guard, and we have 13,000 Guard members, and many of them were deployed last year to Afghanistan and Iraq, and I went there to visit them. And I told them the same thing I told your viewers today, that I'm so impressed by how our soldiers work as a team. They sacrifice for the common good. They never complain or whine. They get the job done. That's what we have to do as citizens in Illinois, especially for our most vulnerable citizens. We have to work as a team, never complain, understand that there's a common good, and if we all work towards that, we can make the will of the people the law of the land.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Janet. It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Okay.